He knew they would come. Deep in the desert, inside a cave lost to time, an American soldier discovers something that was never meant to be found. A body, a watch that's still ticking, and a letter written decades ago but describing events that haven't happened yet. From that moment on, reality begins to unravel. Because this isn't just a war mystery, it's something much, much bigger. And now, he's trapped inside it. What was found in this cave could change everything we know about time, war, and existence itself. But the most important question isn't how, it's why. And the scariest part, he already knew you would be listening to this story. The cutting winds swept through the nameless desert dunes, lifting fine dust that stung the eyes and coated the tongue. The sun had already set, leaving the sky a deep, starless blue, an overwhelming darkness broken only by the distant hum of Humvee engines. Sergeant Matthew "Matt" Reynolds checked his digital watch. 11:47 p.m. The silence on the radio was unsettling. His platoon, 14 elite soldiers, moved forward slowly, like armed shadows, following the drone data that had marked an anomaly just ahead. The mission was clear: reconnaissance and possible elimination of enemy threats. The location, a cavern carved into a mountainside, cold, dark and lifeless. Too lifeless. Matt gripped his M4 rifle, sweat slipping beneath his tactical gloves. Instinct screamed at him. Behind him, Private James O'Connor, a young but determined recruit, whispered, "Sir, this place is too quiet." Matt signaled for silence. He raised his closed fist. "Stop!" He turned to Lieutenant Bradford, who was checking the heat mapping on a military tablet. "Anything new?" Matt asked, voice low. Bradford frowned. "Negative. The heat signature inside the cave just disappeared." Matt stiffened. "What do you mean, disappeared?" Bradford glanced at him, uneasy. 5 minutes ago, there was movement inside. Now nothing, like it vanished. A chill ran down Matt's spine. He turned to his men. "Check your weapons. We go in 3 minutes." No one questioned the order. The army didn't train soldiers to hesitate. Into the darkness. The cavern entrance was wide enough for a vehicle to pass through. Matt was the first to step inside, his rifle-mounted flashlight cutting through the suffocating blackness. The air was damp, the scent of earth and mold mixed with something else, something old. The silence was absolute. No sound of insects, no wind, no echoes of their footsteps. Matt's light swept across the walls. Then he froze. "Jesus Christ," O'Connor whispered. Against the stone wall, a body, or what was left of one. A skeleton, still dressed in an American military uniform. The tactical vest was decayed, the boots falling apart. But that wasn't the worst part. It was the gold pocket watch, still ticking, and the dog tags, corroded but legible. J.W. The platoon stood in shocked silence. "What the hell is this?" Bradford muttered. Matt knelt slowly, reaching for the watch. The moment his fingers touched the cold metal, a shiver crawled up his arm. He turned it over. Engraved on the back, "To my daughter, with eternal love. J.W." The world felt like it had stopped. Matt swallowed hard and looked around. Beside the skeleton, a small metal case. He grabbed it, slowly opening the latch. Inside was a sealed letter, remarkably well preserved. Matt felt his stomach tighten. He ripped open the seal and began to read. The first words froze the blood in his veins. "If you are reading this, it means you found my body, and that my story was meant to be discovered." Matt stopped. His breathing was heavy. He looked at Bradford, at O'Connor, at his men. Then he kept reading. "You think you found this cave by chance? I already knew you would come, and I know what is about to happen. You don't have much time. Listen carefully, and use this to save your team." Matt's radio suddenly crackled to life, breaking the silence. "Eagle 1, this is base. We've detected multiple heat signatures approaching your perimeter." Matt's blood turned to ice. He glanced back at the letter. Then he read the next line. "In exactly 2 minutes, an attack will begin. They will come from 3 directions. You must position yourself now." The silence in the cave was absolute. Bradford stared at him. "What does it say?" Matt looked at his watch. 11:58 p.m. "We have 2 minutes to prepare." Bradford frowned. "Prepare for what?" Matt locked his rifle. "To survive." The radio crackled again. "Eagle 1, we confirm hostile movement. They're coming." And then the first shot rang out in the darkness. Hell breaks loose. The sharp crack of the first gunshot shattered the silence. Matt threw himself behind a rock formation, pressing his back against the cold stone as bullets ricocheted off the cave walls. "Contact! Open fire!" Matt roared. His men reacted instantly. The cave entrance exploded into chaos as muzzle flashes lit up the darkness, the air filling with the deafening roar of gunfire. They were being ambushed. From the entrance, silhouettes in dark clothing rushed forward, rifles firing in deadly bursts. The enemy was fast, organized. But Matt had something they didn't. The letter JWs had already seen this battle, and Matt was ready for it. He grabbed the radio. "Alpha, Charlie, cover the entrance! Bravo! Move right! They're flanking us!" Bradford's head snapped toward him. "How the hell do you know that?" Matt didn't answer. Instead, he pointed to a narrow passage on the right side of the cave. "We take that route." "Now." O'Connor, crouched beside him, hesitated for only a second. Then he saw something that made his stomach drop. Exactly as JW predicted, a second enemy squad was moving to cut them off. Holy shit, he was right. Matt didn't have time for doubt. He grabbed O'Connor by the vest and shoved him toward the passage. "Move!" O'Connor and 3 others rushed down the narrow path. Matt stayed behind, covering their retreat as the first wave of enemies collapsed under heavy fire. But more were coming, a lot more. The first capture. The enemy was relentless. Matt emptied his magazine and reloaded in seconds, pivoting to fire into the oncoming swarm. Bradford yanked the pin on a grenade and threw it toward the cave entrance. Boom! The shockwave rattled the cavern. A cloud of dust and fire erupted, sending enemy bodies flying. "Go! Go!" Bradford yelled. They raced through the narrow passage, deeper into the cavern, away from the gunfire. But then something went wrong. From behind them, a metal grate slammed shut. Matt spun around, eyes widening. A trap! O'Connor, Bradford, and the rest were on one side. Matt was alone on the other. "Sarge!" O'Connor screamed. Matt rushed to the grate, gripping the bars. "Find another way out! Keep moving! We're not leaving you! That's an order!" The gunfire from behind him was getting louder. Matt turned around, heart pounding, and then he heard it. A voice from the shadows. "You were never supposed to be here, Sergeant Reynolds." Matt froze, because that voice was speaking perfect English. The first interrogation. They came for him fast. Before Matt could react, 2 masked men tackled him, slamming him to the ground. His rifle was ripped from his hands, his arms twisted behind his back. He fought like hell, elbowing one in the face. But then, crack! A rifle butt slammed into his skull. His vision exploded with white light. Then, darkness. Everything went black. Matt woke up in a chair, hands bound behind his back. The room was dimly lit, the walls lined with old metal plating. It looked like part of the bunker. A man stood in front of him, tall, well-dressed, calm. Not a soldier, something worse. Matt's head throbbed. His mouth was dry. The man folded his arms. "You have no idea what you've walked into, do you?" Matt stared at him, breathing heavily. The man sighed. "You Americans. Always so arrogant, always assuming you're in control." Matt clenched his fists. "You have no idea who you're messing with." The man smiled. "Oh, but I do, Sergeant Reynolds." He pulled something from his pocket and tossed it onto the table. Matt's stomach dropped. It was J.W.'s letter. Opened, read. The man leaned in, speaking softly. "Tell me, Sergeant, do you believe in fate?" Matt gritted his teeth. He wasn't going to die in that chair. He would get out, and when he did, he would burn this entire place to the ground. One way or another. The interrogation. Matt's head throbbed. His arms ached from being tied behind the chair, the rough ropes digging into his wrists. The dimly lit room smelled of dust, rust, and something else. Something old. Across from him, the well-dressed man paced slowly, his polished boots tapping against the floor. His presence was calculated, controlled. Matt could tell. This wasn't just an interrogation. It was a performance. The man finally stopped pacing and turned to Matt. "Are you Sergeant Reynolds?" His voice was smooth, too smooth. "You and your men should never have found this place." Matt didn't say a word. The man exhaled, almost amused. "Silence. Good. That means you're disciplined. That means you're a survivor." He picked up J.W.'s letter from the table, running his fingers over the edges of the paper. Fascinating, isn't it? A man who disappeared 70 years ago, predicting your arrival down to the minute. Matt's jaw clenched. "What do you want?" The man smirked. "You still don't get it, do you?" He leaned in. "I'm not here to interrogate you, Sergeant. I already know everything I need to know." He tapped the letter. "You are part of something much bigger than you realize." Matt felt his heart rate spike. The man leaned closer. "You're not just reading history, Sergeant Reynolds. You're living it." Matt's blood ran cold, because deep down, he already knew that was true. The escape. The door behind the man clicked open. A second figure entered, a guard, armed and alert. The man straightened, rolling his shoulders. "We'll talk again soon, Sergeant, but for now, I have other matters to attend to." He nodded at the guard. "Make sure he stays alive." Matt watched as the man walked out, leaving the door slightly ajar. A mistake. The moment it closed, the guard stepped forward, gripping his rifle. Matt was already moving. He kicked the chair backward, using his body weight to flip it over. The impact sent splinters of wood flying, and as the guard stepped back, startled, Matt twisted his legs up, wrapping them around the man's neck. A sharp twist, and the guard collapsed. Matt rolled onto his knees, breathing hard. His hands were still tied, but not for long. Using a shattered piece of the chair, he soared through the ropes, freeing himself just as alarms started blaring. He grabbed the dead guard's sidearm, a Glock 19, checked the magazine, loaded. Then he picked up J.W.'s letter from the table, because no matter what happened next, he wasn't leaving without it. Matt slipped into the hallway, gun raised. It was time to end this. The secret of Blackwatch. The facility was bigger than he expected. Matt moved swiftly through dimly lit corridors, his boots silent against the concrete floors. Doors lined the walls, each marked with strange designations. Blackwatch 01A, Blackwatch 02C, Blackwatch 03B. Each door had a reinforced lock and a small, fogged window. Matt's gut twisted. He knew exactly what was behind those doors. The failed experiments, the ones who never left. He kept moving. Further down, he spotted an old control room. Matt slipped inside, scanning the dusty equipment. Most of it was ancient, Cold War-era tech. But one monitor was still active, a flickering surveillance feed. Matt's stomach clenched, because on the screen, he saw something impossible. The feed showed inside the caver where he had first found J.W.'s body. But now, the cave was empty. No skeleton, no remains, just an open, untouched floor, like J.W. was never there at all. The warning. The radio on the desk crackled. Matt instinctively raised his gun, his heart pounding. Then, a voice came through, a voice that should not exist. "Sergeant Reynolds, you should have left when you had the chance." Matt froze, because the voice on the radio was J.W.'s, the voice from the past. Matt stared at the radio, frozen. That voice, it couldn't be. J.W. was dead. Matt had seen his skeleton with his own eyes. He had read his final words, but now that same voice was coming through the static, low, calm, and waiting. Matt swallowed hard and pressed the radio's transmit button. JW, silence. Then the voice returned. "You shouldn't have come back, Sergeant." Matt's pulse pounded in his ears. "Who are you?" More static. Then a single, chilling response. "You already know. The video archives." Matt scanned the control room, his hands shaking slightly as he looked for answers. A dusty terminal blinked with a green light. It was still active. Matt sat down and typed in a command. A file list appeared. Old recordings. One caught his eye. Blackwatch Final Experiment, 1952. Matt clicked. The screen flickered to life. A black and white video began playing. The image was grainy, flickering with static. A cold, sterile room. In the center, a man sat in a chair, strapped down. Matt's breath caught in his throat. It was J.W., younger. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow and exhausted. In the video, a scientist, dressed in a military uniform, stood beside him. Subject J.W., Walker, final phase of testing, March 18th, 1952. J.W. stared blankly ahead. The scientist continued. Blackwatch was meant to see into the future, but we've discovered something much greater. The scientist turned to face the camera. J.W. isn't predicting time. He's reliving it. Matt's blood ran cold. Every moment, every event, looping endlessly. He does not just see the future, he returns to it. J.W.'s head twitched slightly. The scientist leaned closer to him. "Tell me, Captain, where are you now?" J.W.'s lips parted slightly. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he answered, "I'm back in the cave." The nightmare never ended. Matt shoved the chair back, standing abruptly. His mind was racing. J.W. was trapped in time, not alive, not dead, but looping. Matt looked back at the screen. The scientist continued speaking. "The human mind is not meant to withstand this kind of strain. Subject is deteriorating, but the data is invaluable. If we can control the loop, we can control the war." Then J.W.'s eyes shifted, looking directly into the camera. Through 70 years of history, through the screen, through time itself, he was looking at Matt. And then J.W. spoke again. "Don't trust them, Sergeant." Matt's stomach twisted. J.W. had known. Even in 1952, he had known Matt would be watching this. It wasn't over. It was never over. The warning. The radio crackled again. Matt hesitated. Then he pressed the button. "If this is really you, then tell me, what the hell am I supposed to do?" Silence. Then the response. "You can't stop it, but you can choose your side." Matt's jaw clenched. "What does that mean?" J.W.'s voice dropped lower. "It means they're already coming for you." Suddenly, the room went dark. The screen cut to black. Then, the alarms began blaring, and Matt realized too late. He had just been found. The hunt begins. The alarms wailed, their piercing sound echoing through the underground facility. Matt spun around, his pulse hammering in his ears. The once dim corridors were now flashing with red emergency lights. They were coming for him. J.W. had warned him, too late. Matt grabbed his weapon and sprinted down the corridor. Behind him, heavy boots thundered against the floor. Then, gunfire. A hail of bullets tore through the air, shredding the metal walls. Matt dove into a side passage, rolling as a burst of rounds narrowly missed his head. "Target is moving towards Sector 3. The voices were distorted over the radio chatter, but Matt recognized the tone. Professional, military. This wasn't just some rogue operation. This was organized, controlled. They weren't trying to kill him. They were trying to capture him. The escape route. Matt's eyes darted across the hallway, searching for an exit. He needed to get out. Now. Then he saw it. A rusted air vent, barely large enough to crawl through, no time to think. Matt holstered his gun, leaped up, and yanked off the vent cover. The metal screeched loudly, but he didn't care. He scrambled inside, pulling the cover back just as the first soldier turned the corner. "He's gone! Find him now!" Matt held his breath. From inside the vent, he could see their boots moving beneath him. They had no idea how close he was. One mistake, one sound, and it was over. His fingers instinctively tightened around JW's letter in his pocket. Then, through the vent, he saw something strange. One of the soldiers was holding a file. Matt could barely read it in the flickering red light, but he saw two things clearly: Project Blackwatch, Phase 2, and underneath it, subject Matthew Reynolds. Matt's blood turned ice cold. They weren't just coming for him. They had been waiting for him. The final test. Matt crawled through the vents, his mind racing. He was never supposed to escape. JW hadn't been the final test. He was. The Blackwatch experiment never ended. Matt had been part of it from the moment he stepped into that cave, and now they were here to finish the job. The leap of faith ahead. The vent opened up into a vast chamber. Matt crawled to the edge and looked down. His stomach dropped. It was a vertical drop of at least 50 feet. A maintenance platform, old and rusted, hung just below. It was his only way out. Behind him, metal clanked. The soldiers were opening the vent. Matt had 2 seconds to decide, and he only needed one. He jumped. The fall. Matt hit the rusted platform hard, the impact rattling through his bones. For a second, everything went black. Then, pain. His shoulder screamed in protest, but he had no time to stop. Above him, the vent cover exploded open. He jumped! "He's below us!" Matt rolled onto his stomach, forcing himself up. The platform beneath him groaned, its corroded steel barely holding together. Then, a sharp clank. Something landed near his feet. Matt's instincts screamed at him. A grenade. He didn't think. He ran. The explosion ripped the platform apart, sending shrapnel flying as Matt lunged for the edge. For one terrifying second, he was weightless. Then, crash. Matt landed on a catwalk below, rolling to break the fall. Pain erupted through his body. He coughed, pushing himself up. Gunfire rained down. The soldiers above were already adjusting their sights. Matt sprinted forward. The catwalk led to another corridor, one that sloped downward, deeper into the facility. No time to hesitate. Matt ran. The forgotten room. The corridor twisted, leading him into a massive underground chamber. Matt stopped, his breath caught. This wasn't just a bunker. It was something much bigger. The room stretched for hundreds of feet, lined with massive containment pods, rows upon rows of sealed glass tanks. Inside each one, something moved. Matt stepped closer, his stomach twisted. The figures inside the tanks wore military uniforms. Some were old, torn, decayed. Others looked new, too new. Then he saw it. One of the tanks was open, and it was empty. Matt's pulse pounded in his ears. This was where JW had been kept, but now he was out. The truth about Blackwatch. Matt turned toward a control panel. A single screen flickered, a login screen, old technology. Matt typed in the only name that mattered, JW Walker. The screen blinked. A video file appeared. Matt clicked. A military officer appeared on screen, the same man from JWE's 1952 video. But now, he was much older. If you are watching this, then you already know. Blackwatch was never about predicting the future. Matt's hands tightened into fists. It was about controlling it. The officer leaned forward, his face cold. Walker was the first, but he was just the beginning. The screen glitched. Then, another name appeared. Project Blackwatch, Phase 2. Subject, Matthew Reynolds. Matt staggered back. This was never about JW anymore. It was about him. Blackwatch had been waiting for him. The warning. The radio on the desk crackled to life. Matt's breath caught. Then, that voice again. "Sergeant Reynolds." Matt froze. "J.W., you should have left when you had the chance." Matt's pulse thundered. "Where the hell are you?" J.W. paused. Then his voice came through. "You already know the answer." Matt turned slowly, and standing in the doorway was J.W. Walker, alive, or something close to it. The man who shouldn't exist. Matt stood frozen. His mind screamed this wasn't possible. J.W. was dead. Matt had found his body. He had seen the bones, the dog tags, the letter, but now he was standing right in front of him. Same uniform, same eyes, but something was off. J.W. wasn't breathing. His chest didn't rise or fall. No steam from his breath in the cold air. And yet, he was there, watching, waiting. J.W. tilted his head slightly. "Now you have questions." Matt tightened his grip on the pistol in his hands. "You're goddamn right I do." J.W. smirked. "Then ask the right ones." What Blackwatch really wanted. Matt took a step forward, gun still raised. "How the hell are you still alive?" J.W. exhaled slowly. "I told you, Sergeant." He nodded toward the screens behind Matt, where the old military files still flickered. Blackwatch wasn't about seeing the future. His voice dropped lower. It was about sending men back into it. Matt felt his stomach twist. He had thought he understood. He had been so wrong. "You're telling me they weren't trying to predict time, they were trying to reset it?" J.W. nodded. "We were never meant to win wars, Sergeant." His expression darkened. "We were meant to fight them over and over and over again." Matt stared at him, unblinking, because suddenly everything made sense. Blackwatch didn't want strategy. They wanted soldiers who could die and be sent back, over and over, a never-ending war. J.W. spread his hands. "I have fought the same battles for 70 years. I have died more times than I can count." He stepped closer. "And now they're ready for their next experiment." Matt's heart pounded. J.W. locked eyes with him. "You, the last warning." The air felt too thick. Matt took a slow step back. "No." J.W. didn't move. "You think you made choices, Sergeant?" Matt's grip on his pistol tightened. J.W. took another step forward. "Did you choose to come here?" Matt opened his mouth, then hesitated. J.W. smirked. "Did you choose to find my letter? Or did you just follow the orders someone left for you?" Matt's head spun, because the truth was he had been led here. The letter, the cave, the sealed reports. Everything was meant to be found. J.W. nodded. "Now you understand." Matt felt his pulse hammering in his throat, because deep down he knew what was coming next. J.W. reached into his pocket. Matt lifted his gun, but J.W. didn't pull a weapon. He pulled out a pocket watch. His watch. Matt watched in horror as the second hand did something impossible. It ticked backward. 3 seconds. J.W. exhaled. "This is your last chance, Sergeant." He held out the watch. "Take it or let them take you." Matt's mind raced. Take the watch, accept the cycle, refuse, and be hunted forever. There was no way out. J.W. tilted his head. "Choose." Matt took a breath and reached out. The choice. Matt's hand hovered over the watch. J.W. held it steady, his expression unreadable. The second hand ticked backward again. 3 seconds. Matt felt his heart pounding. "If I take it," he swallowed hard, "what happens to me?" J.W. sighed. "The same thing that happened to me." Matt's fingers curled into a fist. "And if I refuse?" J.W. tilted his head slightly. "Then you run." Silence. Matt looked into his eyes. They were tired. A soldier who had fought too many wars. And now he wanted Matt to replace him, to take his place in the cycle. Matt's mind raced. He had been a soldier his whole life. He knew how to follow orders. But this wasn't war. This was something else, something unnatural. And Matt wasn't ready to give up his life to it. Not yet. His decision was made. He turned and ran. The chase JW didn't stop him, not at first. Matt sprinted through the underground facility, dodging through corridors, his lungs burning. The alarms were still blaring. Somewhere, soldiers were still searching for him, but they weren't his biggest problem. JW was. Matt heard footsteps behind him, slow, measured. JW wasn't chasing him like a man. He was following him like a shadow. Matt rounded a corner, and JW was already there. Impossible. Matt skidded to a stop. JW stood in front of him, arms crossed. "It doesn't work like that, Sergeant." Matt whirled around, but JW was behind him again. The hallway was empty, silent. Matt was trapped. JW stepped forward. "This isn't your first time running, is it?" Matt's blood ran cold. JW smiled. "You always run." Matt's grip tightened around his pistol. He had one bullet left, and he was out of options. He raised the gun. JW just watched him, unblinking, calm. Like he had seen this moment 1,000 times before, Matt pulled the trigger. The impossible moment. The gunshot echoed through the hall. The bullet hit JW directly in the head, but he didn't fall. He didn't bleed. Instead, he rewound. Matt watched in horror as the bullet rose from JW's skull. The casing snapped back into the gun. His finger unpulled the trigger. Time reversed 3 seconds, and Matt never fired, like it never happened. JW smirked. "You can't kill me, Sergeant." Matt staggered backward, because for the first time he understood JW wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was something else, something outside time, something unstoppable. JW held up the watch again. "You can't outrun time, Matt." Matt felt the walls closing in. He had made his choice, but it didn't matter. JW was always going to catch him, unless Matt did the one thing JW never expected. He looked past the watch, past the mission, past the war, and made a new choice. He turned and ran deeper into the bunker. The last chance. JW hesitated, just for a second, because this time, Matt wasn't running away. He was running toward something. The main power controls. Matt sprinted down the hall, dodging debris, leaping over fallen equipment. JW was right behind him, but Matt was faster, because he had one last move left. He reached the power room. Inside, a single lever, the facility's main power grid. If he pulled it, everything would shut down. No more containment pods, no more cameras, no more experiments, no more Blackwatch. Matt grabbed the lever. JW lunged for him, and Matt pulled. The end of Blackwatch. The entire facility shook. Lights exploded in sparks. Sirens died. The building plunged into darkness. And then, for the first time in 70 years, time stopped. The aftermath. Matt woke up outside. The desert air was cold. The facility was gone. Nothing but a collapsed mountain of rubble. JW was gone, too. No body, no trace. Just the watch in Matt's hand. Still ticking, still counting down. 3 seconds. Matt took a deep breath. He had ended Blackwatch, but he had a feeling this wasn't over. Because time always resets, and JW was still out there, somewhere, waiting, watching, and maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone. The silence after the storm. The desert was eerily quiet. Matt sat on the cold sand, breathing hard. The facility was gone. Nothing but a collapsed mountain of rubble stood where Blackwatch had once existed, but his hands were still shaking. He looked down at the pocket watch, still ticking, still moving, 3 seconds backward, over and over and over. Matt closed his eyes. He had shut down the facility. He had destroyed everything, but had he really won? The first warning. His radio crackled. Matt's eyes snapped open. There shouldn't have been any signal. The base had been destroyed, but now a single transmission was coming through. A voice. "You made the wrong choice, Sergeant." Matt's blood turned to ice. He grabbed the radio. "Who is this?" A pause. Then the voice continued. "You think this ends with you?" Matt's grip tightened. He knew that voice. It wasn't J.W. It was someone else. A second later, coordinates flashed across his radio screen. A new location, a place deep in the United States. Matt stared at it, his heart pounding. A new facility, a second Blackwatch. He hadn't stopped anything, he had only delayed it. The final puzzle piece. Matt stood up. His legs were sore. His body felt like he had been through hell. But his mission wasn't over. He had spent months chasing ghosts, chasing J.W., chasing the truth. Now the truth had found him, and it came with one last message. The radio crackled again. The voice spoke softly this time. "You know what you have to do." Matt looked down at the pocket watch. He took a deep breath. Then he crushed it in his fist. The glass shattered, the ticking stopped, and Matt walked into the darkness, toward the next battle, toward Blackwatch. The last war. Matt didn't sleep that night. He sat in the driver's seat of a stolen Jeep, staring at the coordinates flashing on his GPS. A second Blackwatch facility, deep in the United States. This wasn't just another mission, it was a death sentence. But Matt wasn't afraid of dying. Not anymore. Because after everything he had seen, he wasn't even sure death was real. Not when time kept looping. Not when J.W. was still out there. Matt gripped the steering wheel. "Let's finish this." And he hit the gas. The final facility. The coordinates led him to an old military base in the middle of nowhere. It looked abandoned, overgrown. But Matt wasn't stupid. He knew what Blackwatch was capable of. He parked the Jeep a mile away and continued on foot. Gun ready, mind focused. He wasn't leaving until he burned this place to the ground. The last recording. Matt moved through the crumbling buildings, silent as a ghost. Then he found the entrance. A hidden bunker. Same structure. Same design, another Blackwatch. He entered cautiously, weapon raised. The power was still on. Lights flickered, monitors hummed, and in the center of the room, a single video file was playing. Matt stepped closer. The image glitched, then sharpened, and his breath caught, because staring back at him was himself. The truth about Matt Reynolds. In the recording, Matt's own face looked tired, beaten, like a man who had seen too much. Then, the video version of himself spoke. "If you're watching this, then I failed." Matt's heart slammed against his ribs. He didn't remember recording this. How could he? The other Matt continued. "You think this is the first time you've been here?" Matt froze. The video Matt leaned in on, "It's not." Matt's hand started shaking. No, that wasn't possible. The video Matt sighed, rubbing his temples. "You don't remember, because they don't let you. Every time you get this far, they reset you." Matt felt his stomach drop. Reset. The video Matt pointed at him. Blackwatch isn't just about reliving time, it's about rewriting it. Matt's mind spun. They've been testing you, Matt, over and over, changing small things, erasing what doesn't work, until you finally do exactly what they need you to. Matt staggered back from the screen. No, but deep down, he knew it was true. Every mission, every decision, it was all just part of the test. The video, Matt looked directly at him. "You have to break the cycle, this time, for real." Then, the screen glitched out, and the alarm started blaring. The last fight. Matt didn't hesitate. He grabbed a grenade from his belt and pulled the pin. No more resets. And he threw it at the servers. Boom! Flames ripped through the bunker. Data burned. Blackwatch collapsed. Matt ran. The fire swallowed everything. Every failed experiment, every erased memory. Matt didn't stop until he was back in the open air, gasping for breath. Behind him, the facility caved in. Blackwatch was gone. For good. The final message. Matt stood there, watching the ruins burn. And then, his radio crackled one last time. A voice came through, weak, fading. "You did it, Sergeant." Matt froze. J. W. Matt grabbed the radio. "Where are you?" A pause. Then, "I don't know." J. W. chuckled. "But at least, I think I'm free." The signal cut out. Silence. Matt exhaled, and for the first time in what felt like lifetimes, he felt free too. The legend of Blackwatch. Matt never returned to the military. No reports were filed. Blackwatch never existed, at least not anymore. But sometimes, on long, sleepless nights, Matt swore he could still hear it, the ticking of a watch that no longer existed, and he would wonder, did he really escape? Or was this just another reset? The cycle was broken, or was it? Blackwatch was destroyed. But is it really over? J.W. vanished. But what if he's still out there? Time always finds a way to start again. If you thought this story was insane, drop a like. It helps the channel grow and brings more stories like this. And let me know in the comments. Do you think this mystery is truly over? Or is there still something darker hiding behind Blackwatch? See you in the next story. Or have we been here before?